you cannot do anything in the practice without somebody watching over you. If it's not done his or her way, it's not done correctly. We need to talk about this openly in the dental assistant community. Sitting by and letting the train run over you on the tracks over and over and over again is not a solution, my friends. I want to stop the micromanaging. I want to stop feeling like this. And here are some ideas on how I think that could be done. Hey everybody, it is Kevin Henry, founder of Dental Assistant Nation. So glad you joined us for another edition of the Dental Assistant Nation podcast. Recording this today from Anaheim. I'm out at the California Dental Association meeting. Always love coming to these meetings and not only learning what's going on with dental assistants, but also what's going on with big trends. One of the things that I'm going to be doing later today after I record this podcast is I am moderating a panel on AI and what it means for the clinical team. So if you have questions about AI and what it might mean for dental assisting, I want you to go back into our archives. We did a great episode about AI and what is coming next for dental assistants and what you need to know. Make sure you find that. We're going to put that in the show notes, so it's very easy for you to find as well, because I want to make sure that you're on top of this trend, because dental assistants, I think AI is something that is not only exciting that it's coming into dentistry, but also I think it's going to enhance your careers as well. And I think whenever it comes to the communication side of things with patients, I think it's going to elevate your game also. So make sure that you listen to that episode, and I'll be on soon with more thoughts of what I heard here at California Dental. And I have a surprise guest coming in for a podcast very soon about some big things that are happening here in California that are impacting dental assistants as well. But let's talk about something that's really important. So while I've been here in California, as well as while I was recently at Star of the North in the Twin Cities in Minnesota, and thanks to all of you who showed up for a pair of sold-out classes there at Star of the North for dental assistants as we battled and beat those demons of dental assisting. But I heard from so many of you during my travels recently that you're feeling micromanaged. You're feeling like that you cannot do anything in the practice without somebody watching over you. And often, let's be honest, that's your dentist. And often, let's be honest again, that is so often some of the things that you've been trained to do that maybe the dentist is like hovering over you, or if it's not done his or her way, it's not done correctly. And so I know that there's a lot of pressure on a lot of you right now with micromanaging in the dental practice. For some of you, absolutely, it's the dentist. For some of you who I've been talking to, you're a newer dental assistant in the practice, and it is that, shall we say, more seasoned dental assistant in the practice that is telling you everything you must do perfectly her way or his way. Now, I will say, I think it's really important whenever it comes to infection control that things are done exactly a certain way. Don't get me wrong. But I think there's a lot of latitude as well when it comes to a lot of other things that we do in the practice. Everything from clinical procedures to storage to even tray setup. You know, there's a lot of things that can vary from practice to practice, doctor to doctor, team to team. And some of you think you have a good idea of what can come next. Some of you have a very good idea about what can be done to improve the systems in the practice. And you don't feel like that you're able to do that because it's always being watched like a hawk. And I had one dental assistant tell me in Minnesota, she said, I'm so tired of trying to break people out of the rut, but they refuse to do it. And she went on to tell me about how that she tried to incorporate a new material into the process, one that she had actually done some hands-on with. Minnesota is such an amazing state with what they can do with dental assistants up there. And make sure you check out danby.org and all the meet state requirements that are there so you can see what you can do in your state. But she was telling me about all the different things that she had learned about this certain product. And when she brought it into the practice, it was accepted in the practice. But then as time went on, you could tell that people were like, well, this was your idea. And then they held her very accountable for trying something new. So while that may not seem like micromanaging in what we normally think of, I will tell you, I'm hearing that more and more from people that they're given the latitude to try something new in the practice. And all of a sudden, they're held accountable if something goes wrong. Now, I don't think there's anything wrong with being held accountable, but I also think that there's a lot of things out of our control when something goes wrong, and it shouldn't be all upon us when a lot of times it may be those instructions for use, those IFUs weren't exactly followed properly, or so many other things that could contribute to something going wrong. So if you feel like you're being micromanaged, if you feel like that somebody is always watching over you and you can't do your job to the best of your abilities because you're starting to feel like all eyes are upon you 24/7, let's talk about that today. Because one thing that I have learned is that we need to talk about the things that are bothering us. We need to get these out in the open. We can't just bring them home and talk about it to our family or whatever it might be. We need to talk about this openly in the dental assistant community. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to dedicate this podcast today to the subject of how you handle those micromanagers in the dental practice. And I've asked a few people, I've asked a few consultants around about how that you deal with this. And I will tell you from the consulting point of view as well, a lot of my friends who are in the Speaking Consulting Network, SCN is such a great place. Very glad to be a member of that. And if you're ever looking to become a speaker or consultant yourself, let me just put in a quick plug for speakingconsultingnetwork.com. It's a great, great place to get started. But a lot of my friends who are members of SCN or dental consultants out there have told me that micromanaging has really a bigger part of dental practice, that they're seeing this. And it's not because they don't trust you. I want to make that clear. I'm hearing this from a number of people. It's not that the micromanagers don't trust you. It's that they are so worried right now about everything being perfect in their eyes. Okay, let's make that underlined and very clear. But they're very worried about what's going on with, shall we say, the economy right now. They're very worried about what's going on with their patients. I can tell you that there are some polls out there that are showing patient spending is dropping a little bit with what is going on currently and the uncertainty that is out there about what is coming down the road whenever it comes to our economy and everything from tariffs to everything else. There are some nerves out there. And so dentists are feeling that. And one of the things that they are doing when they feel that is that they try to gather more control over what's going on in the dental practice. Not a great thing. I want to make that very clear. When you grab control over everything, you're not only alienating the people that you're working with, but also a lot of times you're putting too much on your own plate. And so I think that's one thing that we've got to talk about whenever it comes to handling the micromanagers that are out there. And I want to just give a few tips that I've picked up about how to handle micromanagers. And I think it's really important that you think about, could this apply to where you are in your practice? And first thing is understanding their perspective. And I think it's really important whenever we think about those micromanagers that are out there, those bosses that seem to be always hovering over us, to ask the question, why? Is this their personality? Is this something that's popped up recently? And is this something that you can discuss openly and honestly? Now, I am a big fan of open, honest communication. And I think dental assistants in this working environment that we're in right now, when we know so many of you are so valued in what you do, and so many dental practices want to keep you in your role rather than alienate you or lose you, this is the time when you can have some of those conversations and say, this is how I'm feeling right now. What can we do about that? And I know some of you are saying they're going, I can't ever have that conversation with my boss. My boss would shut me down, would not listen, whatever it might be, whatever the excuse might be. But I will tell you, your boss, deep down, would rather talk to you about an uncomfortable subject than risk losing you to another dental practice or another career. So I want you to remember that the hard conversations that you think you might not be able to have, you can have them now easier than ever before, because with the job shortage and the staffing shortage and everything that's going on in our industry when it comes to dental assistants and keeping the team together, this is the time when you can talk about that. So I encourage you, have those conversations, understand their perspective, tell them, I feel like you're doing this and I just want to understand why. Because I think it's really important that we figure out, do they trust you? Do they feel like their way is better? Do they just feel like that they've got to check off on everything before it's done or they can't rest. They can't put it out of their mind. There are some people like that they need to know something is good before they can move on with their day. So when we're talking about micromanaging, I think that that's a really important thing to consider is understanding their perspective, but also building the trust, okay? Whenever we're talking about trust, that's finding the core root of why things are happening whenever it comes to micromanaging. And if they don't trust you on something, that's a conversation that needs to be had. Because if you've been trained in something, especially if they've trained you in something, then why is there no trust there? And I think that that's something that we have to dig up and we have to bring to the surface and say, this is the problem. This is how I feel. How do we get past this? So building trust, and it can include, if you have photography in your practice, and if you're in a state where you're an EFTA or a CDA or a DA2 or whatever that might be, and you can actually do some things with composites, you can do some things whenever it comes to some of the clinical side of the business, and those before after photos that so many dental practices take, it's really important to say, this was part of my work here. These are some of the patients that I've worked with. We haven't had any issues. So where does the trust factor come in? And again, communication. I think it's really important that not only do we understand their perspective and we build trust, but we communicate how we're feeling. I will tell you, I have worked with micromanagers before. And no, never in a dental practice, but I've worked with micromanagers in my job before. And one of the biggest things that I have had to say is, if we keep going down this path, we're not going to be able to work together. And being very open and honest about that. Because I think sometimes you have to write it in crayon for them to understand how you're feeling and what things could lead to. Now, I'm not saying threat. And I'm not saying, that this is the line that you're going to cross if. No. But I think you have to say, this is really bothering me. I'm taking this home at night. I'm worried about this whenever I walk into the practice in the morning, and really state how the micromanaging is impacting you. So I think that's a very important thing. I will also say, offer some solutions. You come up with a plan for how to get past this. Now, the easiest plan, of course, would be stop doing it. And you know what? That would be fantastic. But we as human beings, it's really hard for us to stop something immediately. The whole cold turkey approach, whether it's smoking or, nicotine patches or whatever it might be, it's really hard for us to cut that off immediately. The same can be said with some of the troublesome personality traits that we have as well. So I really want you to think about, if you're setting a boundary and you're offering a solution, what does that look like? Dental assistants, if you've heard me talk, one of the things that I always encourage you to do is to come up with a business plan for how you impact the practice and how that you can impact the practice more moving forward if you had these skills or took this class or whatever it might be. This is one of those times when that business plan comes into play yet again, because you can't just say, we've got to talk about this and here's how I'm feeling. Those are very important. But what comes next? It's just like saying, I want to solve world hunger. Great. Who doesn't? But how are you going to do it? And that's where this comes in as well. I want to stop the micromanaging. I want to stop feeling like this. And here are some ideas on how I think that could be done. And again, it's not stopping immediately, but it is, trust me with this. Let me show you this X amount of times before you understand I can do it. Building that trust. These are steps along the way, but one of the most important things is that you demonstrate your skills and also you're offering solutions as well. And then one thing I really want to emphasize, and I mentioned this again in my courses, and we've talked about it on the podcast numerous times, but I really want to hit this home. Sometimes people micromanage because they want to give feedback constantly. Now, that's not always a bad thing, but I will tell you, we need feedback as human beings. I get that. We absolutely do. We need to know where we're doing good things and where we could be doing better. Big fan of that. But if micromanaging is a part of them thinking that they can do something differently or better than you're doing it right now, then offer to have feedback given to you. Let them show you why they think a certain way is better. Now, I'm not going to tell you to disprove that way, but I think for us to really understand why something is being presented as a better way to do it, or why I'm doing it more quickly than you, or more efficiently than you, I think that's where we've really got to think about, okay, show me. And you know what? Maybe there's some root of truth in there, but you're never going to know unless you actually see what that person is thinking. Ask them what it is and really get it out in the open. So these are some ideas that I've heard from consultants. These are some ways that I think that you can help stop the micromanaging boss from ruining your day. Now, I'm going to say this. In dental assistants, you know I mean this. I'm never going to tell you to walk away from your job. Never. But I'm going to tell you that if you get to a point where you have exhausted all of your resources and you are becoming so burned out because of something that is happening in the practice that is out of your control and you've tried to solve it multiple times, then I think there comes a point where I would rather lose you to another practice than lose you out of the industry. So I want you to take these things to heart, these 5 things that we've talked about today. And again, let me go over them again really quickly. Understand that other person's perspective. I think that's absolutely important. How are you building trust? Okay. How are you communicating openly? How are you offering solutions? And then how are you seeking feedback? I think those 5 things are keys to negating the micromanaging boss and making sure that what you do every day in the practice is not only valued, but is also appreciated as well. Look, can we be honest for just a second? I know we can, because this is the Dental Assistant Nation podcast. We're always honest on here. But dental assistants, you're needed now more than ever. Your dental practice needs you more than ever. These are some interesting times that we're in, not only in terms of staffing shortage, but also with some economic worries that are happening right now as well. I just got back from the Dental Trade Alliance Summit on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C., and I heard about these worries that are out there for the industry. So I know it's a reality, and I think we have to understand that it's a reality as well. So with all that going on, for you to not only be as efficient as you can be, but also in love with your job as much as you can be, I think is so critical today, perhaps more than ever, because we need not only great dental assistants, but we need great dental assistants who love what they do. And this is that opportunity to do that. This is, for many of you, is a bump in the road that you're saying, I can't get past this. What do I do? Well, I've given you 5 things today to at least try. And I hope that you will. The worst thing that we can do is sit there and go, I'll get through today and maybe tomorrow will be better. Sitting by and letting the train run over you on the tracks over and over and over again is not a solution, my friends. Sometimes you're going to have to take the bull by the horns and say, this is how I'm feeling. This is what I'm understanding from you. This is what I want for my day. And I promise you, if you do the things that we've talked about today, and you really start that communication process, that it'll change. Things will be different. Will they be better? I don't know. I can't promise that because I don't know that personality that you're working with. But I can promise you, at least you'll know that you've done everything you can in your power to make your day better. And whenever we sit back at the end of the day and we know that we've done all we can to get to a certain point, there's a satisfaction in that, even if that point isn't reached.
Hey friends, I'm heading to Nashville this year to speak at Accelerate the Dental Revenue Workshop. This isn't just another event. It's packed with real strategies, real solutions, and the kind of insight that actually moves your practice forward. If you're ready to grow, lead, and finally make your systems work for you, grab your ticket. Use my code KevinH to save $150, and I'll see you in Music City.
So, if you've got questions, if you've got concerns, if you've got things that are still eating at you and you've tried all these things, hey, reach out to me. Kevin at kevinspeaksdental.com is my email address. Happy to talk to you about that. I'm also happy that if you're going to be with me at the Montana State Dental Meeting, which is coming up at the end of May, I'll be at CE on the Beach in the Cayman Islands in June. I'll have a lot of things coming up where we're going to be talking to dental assistants. I just hope that, if you see me at a show, that you'll come up and say hi, that you'll come up and talk to me. If this podcast has been helpful to you, let's make sure more dental assistants know about it. Talk about it in those dental assisting Facebook groups that you're in. Give us that 5-star rating, because we want to make sure that we're reaching as many dental assistants as we can every week through Dental Assistant Nation. But absolutely, I want you to know that I am an advocate for you, whether we're on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C., here at the CDA meeting in Anaheim, wherever I might be. I'm always looking out for what's best for dental assistants and what I can do to play a role in making sure that your day goes as well as possible. So until next time, thank you for listening. And it is Kevin Henry, the founder of Dental Assistant Nation, saying thank you, dental assistants, for all you do every day for your patients, for your practice, and for this industry. And thank you for listening to this episode. I'll be back next week with another episode, and I cannot wait to talk to you then. But until then, take care, and I hope you have an amazing week ahead.